Most women are completely unprepared for the realities of sex, particularly if you're having sex for the first time, regardless of age. But I do think, obviously, we see, and I can see actually in quite a few kind of online communities, there's a lot more conversation about what they describe or label as a sexual debut, which I think is a really interesting way of looking at it. And you know what? I see it in the comments all the time. There are women of all ages who, for whatever reason, have not had sex as yet, or at least not penetrative sex as yet. And I thought I would answer some of the questions that come up around, what really women should be prepared for in advance about sex, because most of the preparation, if it happens at all, is really moral, okay, in its content, right? It's about whether you should or should not do it, what container, what context is it acceptable or not to do it in, rather than talking about some of the practical realities of sex and the things that you need to prepare yourself for as a woman. Now, before I get into this, I'm not going to be talking about technique at all, right? I'm talking about bodily autonomy. I'm talking about self-authority around your sexual choices and experiences. And if I'm honest, these are the things that I was never taught. I was not initiated or read into sex in this manner at all. I think that a lot of the time we underestimate the actual information, as it were, that especially women need to have before they have sex. And this probably applies actually even if you've been having sex, but a lot of the questions I get are from women who have not had sex yet. And actually, this is the kind of stuff that, we should be talking to young women about as well before they get to into those stages and are having those experiences. So, number one, people change when they become sexually aroused. Now, when I talk about this is something that a lot of people push back on, because they simply think that this is a case of communication and that somebody shows you all of who they are before they are aroused and you're alone with them. And that is not true. Okay, as human beings, we are multifaceted. There are many elements to us as human beings, and our sexual beings are not, we don't wear that being on the outside all of the time. And it's quite funny because people assume, based on the way a woman dresses, for example, that they know and understand her as a sexual being. And that's not the case at all. Okay, the way someone dresses and even the way they present themselves doesn't actually entirely give you an insight into the way they behave. Okay, and the way they respond to sexual stimuli, the way they will behave and treat you once they are aroused. That is not true. I remember when I was growing up in one of the meetings in my former religion, they were talking about literally saying, in the official meeting, that there gets to be a point beyond which a man can't help himself and he can't stop himself, right? Now, this is a belief that is had. It's not unique to that religion, okay? And so when in a world which often believes that men have no self-control or control over their bodies once they are aroused, it is true that we need to be having conversations about the fact that people can change. Or there are other elements to their character that are often revealed when they become sexually aroused. And make no bones about it, the way someone treats you and treats your body when they are aroused is an indication, it is a reflection of whether or not they respect you. Okay, I'm not going to be mincing my words in this video because actually that's unhelpful. And that's why a lot of people have, unexpected experiences, or they don't know how to process these experiences because we do not speak frankly enough about this. Okay, so how somebody treats you during sex is a reflection of how and if they respect you. Make no bones about it. There are certain things that are not respectful, they are not dignified, and we're going to get into that in a moment. All right? Arousal can change or reveal behavior, judgment, communication, and pacing. If you listen to a lot of women and they talk about their first time or certain sexual experiences, they will tell you about pacing, how unexpected the pacing was. Maybe the person went too fast, too hard, too harsh, The pressure was too much. And a lot of the time, because women or girls and women are not taught to have self-authority over their body, because there's levels to this. There's bodily autonomy and then there's pleasure authority. And I'm going to be doing more videos on what pleasure authority is. Okay. But a lot of the time, if the man is leading, for example, that means that you might be being more passive, particularly when it's your first time or you're new to having sex. Okay. And that means when it comes to pace and pressure, you may not feel like you're in control. You may not have the language to articulate yourself and communicate. It really annoys me when I see people, when I talk about this in the comments, quite frankly, it does annoy me when they're like, well, you just need to communicate. When you're having sex for the first time, you may not always have the language. You may not have the language. And one of the things I know when I was growing up, particularly in my old religion, I would hear the brothers, the men talking about sex. And one of the reasons why they would say that they wanted a virgin wife, even though in many cases they were not virgins themselves, they openly said it's because they want to be the one to introduce and teach their wife sex. See, this is the thing. We have to think about these invisible contracts that often exist. If men are being positioned as the leaders, okay, and women are being expected to be, passive, sexually restrained, especially before marriage, then where are you expecting women to suddenly have the language and the self-authority to communicate what they do and don't want, to communicate when they're uncomfortable, in pain, when something doesn't feel good, something isn't pleasurable? And one of the things as well, I want to if you are a virgin, your body is intelligent. Your body surfaces information to you that will tell you when something feels good, when something doesn't feel good, when you're feeling nothing, or when it's even painful. Do not get bamboozled when people say, well, you're a virgin, so you won't know the difference. No, a lot of the time people are counting on you not knowing the difference, but your body is intelligent. So whether or not you've ever had penetrative sex before, whether or not you've ever touched a part of your body and recognized bodily sensations, your body is intelligent enough. And so you will know when something feels good, regardless of whether or not you've had penetrative sex or not. You're not stupid, and your body is not stupid either. Even if you are discovering parts of yourself, your body is smart, and you know when something feels good or not. It's a bit like taste. I've never liked Brussels sprouts. The first time I tasted them, I didn't like them, period. And I still don't like them, decades later. Just because you've never done something before, it doesn't mean that your body doesn't have the intelligence in terms of its senses to be able to classify something as enjoyable, something as pleasurable, something as painful, uncomfortable, or something you just don't care for. So don't be bamboozled. Just because you may not have had penetrative sex before, it doesn't mean that you will not be able to recognize and register in your brain and your body, in your nervous system, when something feels good or doesn't feel good, right? And so you have to understand that the person sitting opposite you, the person you may have courted, the person you've gone out on a date with, the person you've had conversations with, there's going to be other parts of them revealed to you during sex. And also, quite frankly, after sex, okay? In terms of the way they deal with you in the immediate aftermath of the sex or thereafter, all right? And so do not allow people to, tell you that you could have communicated more, or that it's possible to communicate the entirety of your being before you have sex with someone. It's not, okay? And actually you are going to experience a different part of that person when they are aroused. Now, we can have a completely different conversation about whether you can even predict this, detect this, right? But that is a reality. That doesn't mean it's automatically going to be good or bad. It's just something to understand about the reality of having sex. The second thing is that your body deserves preparation, okay? It doesn't matter if somebody else wants sex and their body and mind is ready. If your body and mind is not ready, that's okay, number one. And number two, articulate that. This is why I believe that sex education is still incomplete. Okay, that's why I said this isn't going to be about certain sex acts. And I see a lot of content out there that is very much focused on positions and all of this stuff. It is so important that mentally and psychologically, as a woman, regardless of your age, you have a certain level of self-authority and pleasure authority so that you can make sure that you are fully participating around pace and when your body feels ready. If your body isn't ready because it deserves to be ready, it needs to be ready. It needs to be aroused. It needs to be warm. It needs to be moist. People don't like it when we talk about these things, but it is the truth. It makes it more pleasurable for your body and for you, period. There is no reason why you should have to decide to allow somebody to have physical access to your body when it's not ready. It doesn't want it, right? So this is about taking your time. And if that person isn't willing to take their time, going back to that point about pacing, then we need to be having a conversation. You do not have to acquiesce when your body is not prepared and ready. That means you may need lubrication. And there are men who don't like to use lubricant. They are either ignorant about its, benefits, or they just don't want to use it. You have a right to say, hey, this does not feel comfortable for me. I would like to, or I would feel more comfortable if we did this. Foreplay is important. We live in a society, okay, where sometimes people want to treat you as if, you are a provider or a sex worker, where foreplay may not be mandatory. No. If you want, and foreplay is vast, it's varied. Do your research. It can mean all number of things or nothing. But it is important to realize that your body deserves preparation, okay? Your body deserves to feel relaxed and safe. Okay? Your body is not a machine that should simply cope with somebody else accessing it, somebody else using it for their own gratification and seeking release at the expense of your body. No. That's not the way it's meant to go. And at this point, I want to say, if you are religious, okay, because the thing about religion is it presents sex as a gift, this gift that God has reserved only for married couples. That's fine. And I don't push back on that belief. You're free to believe what you believe. As you know, if it's the first time meeting me, I grew up in a religion where abstinence should be the standard. So I get all of those things. I don't have a problem with that belief. You're free to believe what you're free to believe. My point here is this: if it's being presented to you as this gift and it's meant to be, a gift, it should be mutually pleasurable. It should be mutually fulfilling. And therefore, the way that person treats you and the way you show up in that scenario and setting should reflect these supposed godly qualities. You can't have someone saying they're a man of God, and when you get into the bedroom, they're an entirely different being. They are acting like the Nephilim, in fact. Those things don't align. Yeah, so this is why I said it's very important to somebody of good character that is genuinely a decent person will not treat you in certain ways when it comes to your body being prepared and them treating you with dignity and respect and being genuinely curious and interested in your pleasure and your comfort, the texture of the experience for you. That's why conversation is so important. And if you find yourself in a situation with someone who doesn't want to talk about the sex at all before doing it, especially if it's under the guise of not having inappropriate conversation, well, that means there's a lot of unknowns that you are going to be navigating when it comes to them. And I hate to say it, sometimes some people, and it's a spectrum, there's predators, and then there's people who are ignorant, it benefits them when no conversation is being had. You see, when you move into a place of self-authority around your body as a woman, you're not afraid of conversations and you're not afraid to articulate what you want and what you need, what you desire. And it allows you to get a sense of the other person, especially when you're having that conversation before the sex even happens. Because then you can get a sense that if they don't want to talk about it, they're not willing to talk about it, that tells you about whether they're going to listen to you during sex, whether or not they're reading your body language, whether or not they're curious about you. Because if they're not willing to talk about it before, that gives you a glimpse into how they're going to be with you during sex, and whether or not it's going to be a mutual experience where energy is being exchanged, or whether they are there to take, whether they're going to be there just to use your body. And people don't like it when I talk so frankly in this way, but it's the truth. If you are able to have communication that you deem to be appropriate, because like I say, some people are religious, you may not want to talk about certain things. That's your choice. However, if that person's not willing to talk about sex beforehand, and not just, oh, are we having it or are we not? Or what's the frequency? Because all of that's one dimensional. Talk about taste level. Talk about comfort. Talk about contraception. Talk about using lubricant or not. Talk about, well, what happens if I'm feeling pain? And I'm saying this specifically if you are a young woman who is abstaining till marriage in particular. Have the conversation. Learn the language. And this is about you stepping into your self-authority. Getting married is an adult decision. And actually, quite frankly, deciding to have sex is an adult decision. So that means you need to function and think like an adult when it comes to this. Have the conversation. Ask the questions. Now, that doesn't mean that everything you talk about will come to pass when you have sex. It doesn't mean that means there won't be other things, new things that you discover about a person when you start having sex with them. But I'm saying what it does do when you stand in that self-authority, it energetically sends a very different message. And you can tell which men are comfortable with women who have pleasure authority, self-authority, in addition to knowing that they deserve bodily autonomy. You get to gauge where he's at. Now, contraception is your responsibility to understand as a woman, okay? And I'm not saying, well, actually, it is your responsibility. And what you'll find, especially in this day and age, is there are a lot of men who do not use contraception. They don't arrive with contraception. They are not prepared with contraception. And that includes the married ones, because often there's the assumption that the woman will simply go on the pill and she will have to ride through the side effects so that he can feel something because it feels better for him. It is very important to understand your body is yours and it matters. Your comfort matters. Okay. And so you really need to understand what your options are when it comes to contraception, how effective the contraception is, what the side effects are. Regardless of whether or not you want to get pregnant or not, STIs and STDs are real. And not everybody is responsible and self-aware around checking and being tested. Do not trust anyone who says, oh, I got tested. Ask for the results. Ask to see the results. And if they are not willing to even share results with you, if they're not willing to go and get tested, don't have sex with them. It's very simple. Yes, it does require some self-control. If someone is not willing to get tested or even talk about testing and their status, that is a sign. Okay, it is a risk for you to continue to have sex with them. And this includes married people too. I was always astounded in my old religion where, sisters would say, well, we're married, so we don't ever have to get tested. Your sexual health it's multifaceted here. There are all sorts of other infections, etc., microbiomes, that your pH balance. So this idea that you never need to go and get tested because you're married and both of you apparently are only having sex with each other is also ignorance on a health level. It's ignorance. That's what it is. Right? Your pH balance matters. There's all sorts of things when you are doing something as intimate as sex where bodily fluids are being exchanged. Saliva is being exchanged. Like, come on now. It's very important that you understand your overall sexual health and reproductive health. It's not about what feels good to them. It's about what is best for your body. This is knowledge that is a part of adulthood. The fourth area is that you never owe progression. This is very important. Just because you've kissed someone, you've maybe taken off your clothes, you've gone to their house, even though I have to say in the world that we're living in today, unfortunately, I'm so sorry to tell you. I'm sorry to tell you that there is a general belief that if you go to somebody's house or you invite them to yours, that means that you are having sex with them. And that means that they can apparently reasonably expect to have sex with you. So just as a side note, I think in the world that we're living in now, don't go to someone's house unless you want to have sex with them for sure. And don't invite someone to your house unless you for sure know you want to have sex with them. I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish that it was possible for two adults to be in a home and sex not be expected and required. But we live in a world that is very different. And I'm here This is meant to be a frank video sharing the realities with you. Okay? Just because you may have said yes an hour ago, yesterday, and by the way, you can't consent in advance. Anybody who's trying to get you to consent in advance is not kosher. Okay? It doesn't mean you have to continue. You do not owe somebody progression. You can change your mind. This is why I talked about self-authority, because often we have to practice self-authority before we get into situations where we may need to verbalize, I don't want to do this. I don't want this. Please stop. I want to end this right now. Unfortunately, the language has to be declarative. It has to be authoritative. It does. You don't owe someone progression. Just because they are aroused, just because they are erect, just because they say they want it, it doesn't mean you owe them progression. Now, might you choose to progress? You may choose to. It doesn't mean you owe it. That is a difference. Somebody telling you that they've got blue balls or that now you've taken, it don't matter. It doesn't matter. It is your body. And this is an intrinsic, internal, personal experience that you might well enjoy. You see, a lot of the time people misunderstand, and I believe sometimes it's willful. When I do this kind of stuff, when I'm being frank about sex, they think it's because I'm saying that sex is inherently dangerous or bad or something that women don't enjoy. No, I'm saying actually by you being more self-authoritative, you get to enjoy whatever you decide in your authority to do. Yeah, you get to enjoy whatever it is you want to enjoy more fully because your yeses are yeses and your noes are noes. You are existing and inhabiting your body in authority. And that changes the game. When it comes to what you can unlock in terms of pleasure and your body, especially as a woman, you have anatomy, some of which is designed almost exclusively for pleasure. Your potential for multiple orgasms, for example, is endless. The different types of orgasm you can have. And before you even get to orgasm, the pleasure spectrum, the pleasure scale and ladder. Now, one of the ways that you can unlock that for yourself is being in your authority in your body. That's one of the ways. And that's why it's important to be aware of these things so that whenever you choose to have sex, you can do it and invite yourself into the full depth and breadth of what that pleasure could look and feel like to you. The fifth area that I want to talk about, and there's a couple of things that go under this section here together. Anal sex. Let's just be very clear here. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people may try it, some people won't. Anal sex, though, just because it's been normalized by pornography, it doesn't mean that you have to do it. I'm going to say that again. Now, the other things that come under this category, anal sex, strangulation, because as somebody rightfully corrected me in one of my videos, choking is not the same as strangulation, right? So anal sex, strangulation, someone ejaculating on your face. Now, you may have seen or been told, or it's been shared with you via pornographic content that everybody's doing it. Well, everybody is not doing it, first of all. Everybody is not doing it. Everybody isn't doing it on their first time of having sex, and everybody is not doing it with somebody they've just met. Somebody they've just met. Not everybody is doing those things. It is not normal to everybody. And you have to remember, when it comes to sex, you, in your full authority, deciding what you want to do. Just because something is normal to somebody else or typical, it doesn't mean it's healthy, number one. It doesn't mean that you should want to do it. It doesn't mean that you have to do it. I'm going to say that again. Just because something is normal and typical, it doesn't mean that it is healthy. It doesn't mean that it is enjoyable. It does not mean it is pleasurable. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It doesn't mean you should want to do it. Especially if you're having sex for the first time, especially if you're new to sex, especially if you're having sex with someone for the first time. Some women do enjoy when someone ejaculates on their face. Some people do enjoy apparently being strangled. Some people enjoy anal sex with no lubricant, for example. This is why I'm this frank. Because here's the thing. People who engage, for example, in anal sex regularly, because they find pleasure in it, There are preparation steps that one takes. So if somebody's trying to do that without your consent, without asking you, they're doing it in the moment, because this is very common. Yeah, a lot of the time men will try and suggest it in the moment, and they won't always utter the words because they don't always have the guts to do that. Sometimes they will make a physical move to penetrate your anus without any lube, without any preparation. I mean, some of them can barely do foreplay, can barely get you aroused and moist in terms of the vagina, and they want to move to the anus. It doesn't mean you have to do it. This is why being in your full authority in your body and when it comes to your pleasure is important, because if you find it pleasurable, you can say yes. If you don't want to do it, if you don't find it pleasurable, because it could be either or both, if you're in your authority, you can also say no. You never have to agree to anal sex just because somebody gestures, initiates, suggests, or asks. It is a separate sexual activity, and it requires its own enthusiastic consent and preparation. No is a no. And no is a no, because that anal sex does not happen easily. Okay, preparation is often needed. And also there's a level of care and attention. This is why it's not something you do with just anybody or somebody that you've just met, somebody you're doing it with for the first time. Right? Because again, it goes back to how somebody treats you during sex reveals whether they respect you, and it reveals their character. And with acts like anal sex, ejaculating on your face, strangulation, these are acts that are going to reveal who that person is. And sometimes, unfortunately, there are things that some men will do to you that they wouldn't even be allowed to do to a sex worker if they were paying them. This is why it's so important. And when you're new to sex, you may not know all of this. Okay, and sometimes some men are taking advantage of your inexperience. Or they're taking advantage, as I say, of in the moment attempting to penetrate your anus. Because what are you going to say? Are you going to really get up and leave? Are you going to unwind yourself from them, get dressed and leave? A lot of the time, sometimes they're counting on your silence and compliance. And then they'll make themselves believe that you enjoyed it, even though you weren't prepared for it. They didn't ask you. There's no lubrication and it wasn't pleasurable. They weren't checking in as to whether or not it was pleasurable to you, because in order for it to be pleasurable to the receiver, there are other elements that come into play. And most people don't even understand those elements. Okay? They don't understand those elements. Which brings me on to the next point. You are not a sex worker unless you're a sex worker. You're not there to perform like a court jester. You're not an inanimate object that someone gets to use to seek release at the expense of. No. Hopefully you're fully participating. You're in your bodily authority, your pleasure authority. And so it's not okay for someone to treat you like that, treat you like an inanimate object. It's something that you participate in, that you can also co-design and co-create the energetic experience, co-create the pleasure and the breadth and the depth and the texture of pleasure that you are going to experience in that scenario, right? You don't exist to just entertain them, impress them, prove that you're adventurous. You don't have to behave as people who are acting essentially in pornography. Okay, it's not an audition. It should be mutually pleasurable, reciprocal, and mutually fulfilling. That's what it should be. Okay, so those are the things I wanted to share with you. More than anything, I'd want a young woman, a young sister to understand, like a younger sister, because I don't think these conversations are being had with young women as openly as they should. That sex is not a test that you have to pass. It isn't something you perform or endure. It's not something you owe anybody. And your first responsibility isn't to make somebody else happy when it comes to sex. Okay, it's not to, your first responsibility is to yourself. And practice that self-authority, that pleasure authority. Practice being connected to yourself and understanding that you deserve a pleasurable experience as well.